Awesome. I think we are good to go. So, hello, everybody, and welcome to this webinar on creating engaging lessons in the digital space. Our speaker today is Sola Woodhouse. I'm Deepika, a scientific support specialist at ADI Sydney, and I'll be hosting this event. So before the talk, I'd just like to give a brief overview of what we are. So we are AD Instruments. At AD Instruments, we create industry-leading software and hardware tools for life science researchers and educators. So for educators specifically, LT along with education kits is one of our extraordinary offerings. So what is LT? LT is our online learning platform with ready-to-use content for life sciences, chemistry, nursing, and medical courses. So LT comes with over 500 interactive and fully customizable lessons and labs for active learning. So if you run labs or teach, today is the amazing session for you. So using our content, software, and hardware is great to improve efficiency, increase student engagement, improve results in theory and clinical practice, and increase student pass rates. The best part about LT platform is that it's completely adaptable. So if you want to make your own content or edit the existing ones. So today we want to share how you can create really engaging lessons using LT. So we are bringing someone who works behind the scenes at ADI to make LT a seamless experience for all of you. So Sora here is an instructional designer in education content at ADI. By coaching and tutoring during high school and university days, she found her love for processing and conveying information for others to understand easily. At ADI, she enjoys imagining herself as a student who doesn't yet understand the concept and thinking of ways which could help make the concept click. Coming from a physiology and computer science background, she brings a unique perspective to LT content. So now in true LT fashion, let us see her create, share, and inspire. The stage is all yours.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Deepika. I might take over screen sharing. Let's see. There we go. I hope everyone can see my screen. Sweet. So as Deepika said, I am an instructional designer at ADInstruments, and my name is Sola Woodhouse. Today, I will be taking you through creating engaging lessons in the digital space, and to do this, I'll be using LT. So I've made a little lesson to take us through here, but what we'll cover today is what makes a lesson engaging, ways to provide that information, how to assess that information, and examples of these in use in a lesson. So for this, we'll be converting a text-heavy PDF lab on sandwiches into an LT lesson. And I say that just so you're not surprised that there's kind of sandwiches everywhere. Sweet, so let's jump on in. What makes a lesson engaging? For this, I've thought of four main things: interest, investment, variety in the delivery of the information, and interactive content. So for interest, at the start of a lab, you can use a hook, a couple sentences, I guess, to get the student interested in the topic. Now, the sentences, it could be about an interesting fact about what you're going to be covering, or it could be something that relates their everyday life, or it could even be a common misconception. Then after a little hook, I like to kind of, I guess, use that and pivot to what will be covered in the lab. Then investment. Near the beginning of the lesson or a lab, I like to ask a student to make a prediction. And this can be a prediction of how they think their experiment will go, or maybe something else. And yeah, this gets the student to think ahead of the lab instead of just going through the motions. Then is the variety in the delivery of information. For this, I've got a great little mini page here to show you. Reading a wall of text is not engaging, at least for me, in any way whatsoever, but chunking it with some dividers, some white space, and maybe some images into relevant sections really helps to spread out that information and make it a lot more digestible. So here we've got a background, kind of an overview of sandwiches, and then this is that same information in relevant chunks with some images on the side that I think definitely make it easier to understand. So you can use things like pop-ups or a background page or a hotspot panel for all of this as well. Then is interactive content. So using different panel types like the hotspot panel, drag and drop panel, or label image panel, which I'll cover shortly, you can ask questions and consolidate information in ways that isn't just ask a question or, just pure text. And although they're called question panels, you don't need to use them for a question and answer. It can be more of a gauge an idea or get the student to explore something. Then, of course, in a lab, having an experimental aspect, whether it's virtual or in person, is another great way to show the concept in action. Then, all right, so different ways to provide the information. You can use a background page, and this is a great place to store information that a student might already know, but they might want to refer to during the lab. And yeah, it's a great way to store the excess information, but it's important not to put anything and everything you can think of because you will just overload the student. Then we've got multimedia. So types of multimedia include images, audio clips, and videos. And what's exciting and coming up next, not quite yet, but coming soon, is the opportunity to embed YouTube videos, which I can show you here. So this is kind of the same as just before, but right here is a YouTube video embedded into the LT lesson. And so that'll be a great way to, I guess, expand the content that you can cover. Then we've got pop-ups. So this is another place that you can store information, and they can be something like a little definition, like etymology, like this, where it pops up just here, or it can be how to use a panel or something much larger, where you can click it and it brings up a big pop-up, and you can store a lot more information in here as well. Then buttons. So buttons are something that they've been around for a while, but they have recently been revamped. One thing that I really enjoy is, I guess, beforehand you can only add an image, but now you can, actually, I might just show you. The new button panel, here we go. You can add an image or you can change the text. And for the text, you can add all these different icons. And as always, you can change it from a file download to a pop-up to a link. But yeah, that's a pretty cool one there. So right here is a download, although I have clicked this many times, so I might not want to download a fifth same copy. Here is a pop-up for adding notes, and here is a link to Wikipedia on sandwiches. Then we've got hotspot panels. So these can be used in lots of different ways. One way like this is to store all these extra bits of information in a nice visual illustration, or you can also use it for histology, zooming into different sections. It's pretty cool. And I've also seen the hotspot panel used as a choose your own adventure type of panel as well, which I thought was pretty cool. Then we've got mini pages. So they're a good way to have, I guess, quite relevant, similar pieces of information next to each other. So you don't have to scroll and scroll, and you can directly compare things like this one, which I think I pulled from, I think it's the heart sounds, but I'm not too sure anymore. But one of the labs we've got. And so you can see all these different, slightly similar, but slightly differing atrial fibrillation and different cardiac things, I guess. Then we've also got sampling and data analysis. So what's great about these panels is that you can just drag it in, and I'll grab one of these as well. And for the read-only data, you can just add data that you've already got like that. and the student can just look at this and get the data that they want. Or for a sampling panel, you've got all these settings files that we've got preloaded into this library for you that you can choose from, which I think is pretty cool as well. You can click add the settings, and that is good to go if I had this sensors plugged in, but I don't. But yeah, that's the sampling and data analysis panels. Now we've got ways to assess information. One of the main important things that I learned at ADInstruments is the importance of Bloom's taxonomy and scaffolding questions throughout the lab. And so I've made myself a little guide of sorts, a little table of the different Bloom's levels and the panels that you can use for them the best. And it's not a hard and fast rule. You can definitely have these in different spots, but I like having a little guide to refer to. So we've got MCQs. Now there's a great article on the website about how to write MCQs, which I can pop in later. But I guess with MCQs, they are definitely for lower level Bloom's questions. And one of my big rules is to not confuse a student. And by that, I mean to not, I guess, asking a student for the wrong answer as the correct answer definitely makes learning that simple single fact a lot harder. But what's cool about MCQs, or I guess any of these question panels, is you can just add your answers. You can change all these different feedback. So no assessment, graded instant feedback, nice and simple. And when you go through edit answer, you can decide whether it's multiple choices or a single attempt. Then we've got categories, and I think these are also quite good. I'd say definitely in the lower two-ish levels of Bloom's, but it's also the level of question that you create. And these are quite simple. You can just drag it across and check the answer, which is quite nice. Label, image, and drag and drop. They're quite similar, but they are useful for different things. I like to use the label image for questions like label this body part, or I guess, yeah, label these different structures in the arm. And then drag and drop, I like to use more for things like ordering things in a list, or let's see, like a flowchart, filling in the sections of a flowchart, and it's good for that. Table questions, these are pretty cool. You can have them simple or not simple. This is a not simple version where the student is able to add rows above and below. And yeah, table question is good for students to be able to enter their own answer in here. Text questions are kind of the classic, what you expect. You ask a question and you add the answer. And one thing I guess I said earlier is that question panels, they're called question panels, but they don't have to be for a question. And so, or they don't have to have a definitive answer. So this one is, how did you make your way into class today? Of course, everyone's going to have different answers, and so you can't have one be-all, end-all answer for that. Whereas this one, explain how a rainbow is formed and when they might occur most often, has a bit more of a structured, solid answer. Awesome. I guess, yeah, straight into the example of using these in a lesson. So here I've got an introduction page. Actually, before that, we'll pause on that. This is the PDF document of sandwiches that I've got converted into an LT lesson. So you can see it's quite wordy. It's not that easy to look through. It's a bit hard on the brain and not that nice at all. There's all the questions at the bottom. So we've got an introduction. Here we've got a little hook to grab the attention. Sandwiches are one of the most versatile and beloved food creations enjoyed worldwide. So a few sentences about sandwiches and then into what's covered in the lab. You'll delve into the history and cultural breadth of sandwiches and construct one for yourself. Pretty good. Then I like to have learning objectives so that students know what they're expected to cover in the lab. And it's also something a student can go back to at the end to see if they've got all the concepts that they need. one thing about learning objectives is I definitely like to have them as actionable items, like construct a sandwich or describe what features make a sandwich. Then down the bottom here, we've got the prediction of what ingredients do you think are necessary for a satisfactory sandwich. So on this introduction page, we've got the interest with the hook and we've got the investment with the prediction. And I think that's a good way to start off a lesson. Then into the overview of sandwiches. So this could be in a background page, if this is something you want students to go through before they come to a lab, or something that they should know beforehand. But we've got the sections in nice chunks with labels and with divider lines and relevant images. So yeah, we've got what is a sandwich, a little definition, history of sandwiches. We've got this guy, John Montague, the Earl of Sandwich, 4th Earl of Sandwich. Then down the bottom, we've got sandwiches across cultures. And so this one, I'm quite proud of myself for making this hotspot panel. You can go through the different countries and find what kind of sandwiches come from there. And so, of course, I've got to represent myself in New Zealand. I've added a Marmite and chip sandwich for New Zealand, but I've also just noticed that I have not added Australia. So this is how you add to a hotspot panel. What's a good sandwich for Australia? I think, is the national sandwich a Vegemite and cheese sandwich? And that's butter, Vegemite, and cheese. Simple and delicious. All right, then on to the protocol. So again, I like to, set the student up for what they're going to come across up here. And we've got divider lines with titles for each section. We've got the activity and then assembly, sandwich experience. So this is another table question panel. You can add what style of sandwich you've made, rating out of 10, and the order of ingredients. For the sake of the next section, I'm going to add some ratings. If we say the classic BLT is a rating of 8, go upside down can be a 5 because that doesn't sound that good, and supreme, which will of course be a 10. So what's great is the student can come down here, and this is, they can click edit graph. Oh, something's not gone quite right here. Right, so, that's interesting. Oh, well, we go on. Let me see if I can add another panel. So this is a graph question panel, and you can select the table or spreadsheet and go boop, down here. And so now hopefully, oh well, that's all right. In theory, this should show the graph here from this table, but that's all right. The students, when there is data and a graph, the students are able to label the title and the axes. So I'd say it's a good way to ease students into the questions. And it's also a good way to, make them ensure that they know what they're talking about or what they have just done. Then into this is a drag and drop panel. Order the following sensations in order of impact on the experience. And so they can just drag them in saying, oh, aesthetic's the best one, then it's the texture. But of course, this is from person to person. It's not a definitive answer, and it doesn't really need a set answer. Then we go down to how did the order of ingredients affect the structural integrity of the sandwich? So a bit more of a difficult question, and it definitely asks about what they've just done. Then we go over to knowledge check. So what's something pretty cool is that there's this simple text question. Where did the name sandwich originate? And I've turned it into not the best wording of a multi-choice question. So this is one way that you can change up what kind of questions you have. Then we've got a label image question. And so these are quite good. You can add labels quite easily. You can just click add label, bread, tomato, cheese, protein. So if we start with just those four, and we can move these around to where we want them to point, and cheese and protein. Awesome. And edit the answer to set the answer. Tomato, cheese, protein. And one last thing I like to do is to put these in alphabetical order. So then it's not, there we go. So then it's not quite obvious which one goes where. Then here's a categories question. Organize these ingredients into bread, filling, and sauce. So this one, I wanted to show you how you can add feedback for students. So down the bottom, sometimes it'll be good to add feedback for students who have been able to answer correctly or haven't. And what's pretty cool is, I guess, you can say, for this one, you can say, many cultures have different bread types. And that might, maybe a little bit more detail, but that might be great for someone who didn't really know what a bao was. Yeah. Then what I think is quite cool is we've got this question here. Compare the anatomy of a Reuben sandwich and a Marmite and chip sandwich. If you're, I guess in this lab, my initial plan was to get students to think about how like ingredients of a sandwich can affect it. But I didn't want students to memorize exactly what is in each type of sandwich. So what I've done here and what I can show you in a moment is add pop-ups to each of these that show what each one is. So to do that, what you do is you select the text that you want, you add this, you click this little pop-up link, and then you click that. I've got a little summary here already, and that is good to go. And then we come back to how does your prediction compare to your observation? So this is I guess, circling back to that initial one with the students. And one thing that's pretty cool is these two panels are, although, let me start that again. So this is, let's say this is the original question panel. You can copy it and then click this button called alias, which then means when you type in this one, apples are great. This text immediately goes over here, and you can always edit this one and it'll change this one. One more thing that's great with these tables is you can use a little equation like this to refer to cells from a different table. And so then students can say, apples are good. And then the observed outcome, sandwiches are better. Yeah. And then to wrap up a lab, you can always add a completion page. So this is like a big report that the student can go through at the end. It's got all of the different question panels that have been covered, or if you don't want a student to go through all of that, then you can always turn it off and it's just you've finished your lesson, congratulations kind of thing. Yeah. So I think that is it for me. What did we cover? We've got how to make a lesson engaging, interest, investment, information delivery, and interactivity. Ways to provide the information. We've covered hotspot and the other panels, chunking of information with the dividers and pop-ups. How to assess the information. We've got the different panel types and the different question styles. And then examples of these in use in a lesson where we turned this big long PDF into a digestible lesson. So that's it on my end. I've seen a couple questions come through. One is from Judith. It says, what is the G with a circle each time you click in a text box? I think that's my Grammarly trying to kick in. I've told it to be quiet, but I think it's still a little bit angry. Then another question is, can you please review how you constructed your drag and drop question on page 7, specifically for the area where you are dropping the labels? Sure thing. Is it this one? Awesome. So this one, these ones are pretty nice. You can drag it around and it's got little, what's it called? Guidelines. But I've just got a little background image that's got the different numbers and a dash. And so I've just aligned the answers to go there and added the labels. So you can add a label like that quite easily, and you can drag them around to anywhere on the page that you want. And another thing is, when you want a wordier one, you can make them bigger or smaller. I hope that answers your question. Next, we've got from Azim is, what is the idea to use example of sandwiches for this LT instead of physiological one? So the reason I've gone for sandwiches is it's quite a simple topic. I figured it'll be a great way to have a lab, an activity, without having to explain like the physiology of something. So if I did something that was like heart arrhythmia, it might be a bit confusing for educators or other attendees who don't really know about the heart, because I guess they might just be trying LT for different topics. So yeah, I figured sandwich is pretty universal and nice and simple. Then we've got another question. Is there a way to download all the information so students can save it and not just the answers to questions? That's a good question, and I'm not 100% sure. I'm wondering, oh, sorry.
Let me add to that. So
yeah.
at this point, because all the content is ADIs, you cannot download the whole lesson because of the intellectual property there. But basically all the answers that the students have given there is something that they've learned out of it. And that's the one part that we've added to download there. Hope that answers the question.
Awesome. Thank you, Deepika.
No problem.
I've got another question. On page 7, drag and drop, it would be really useful to see the pixel sizes of the drags and drops to help work out background picture. That is a good point. Unfortunately, I'm not very versed in the creation of the images. I usually let that handed over to the senior instructional designer or the illustrators, but it is quite easy to change the image. So you can just click a different image and pop it in. So here's one that's got 7 and it'll rescale to change it. I'm not sure if I've got the other one. Oh, there we go. And you can change it back and it'll rescale quite easily. I hope that answered the question. Then I've got another question. Sora, you are unable to construct a graph because you did not select all columns and rows. Oh, perhaps. Hold on. Edit graph. If we go here. Okay. 5. Oh, there we go. Someone has their thinking cap on. Maybe I'm just a little bit tired at the end of the day. All right, if we quickly pop back to this one, once you've got the different values here, a student can go and add the title to the graph or change the name of the axes, and they can also go through, edit the graph, change the graph type, add a curve, or even change where the selection is. So I think that's pretty good as well. Another way for students to explore. Let's see. Did you mention a download option in the buttons option? Can students use this to download text? Yes, I'm not 100% sure if I remember to mention it, but if we go down here, I've added a file here, and so this is a little download button that I've added, and if you click here, you can see that it is added, and this is the same PDF as before. But if you mean by download text, like a PDF or a Word document, can also be like an image, or I'm not sure, kind of anything that you can download, I suppose. I hope that answered your question as well. Can you explain again the benefit of background pages, please? Yeah, of course. Background page is, I guess, a great place to have information that you want students to know. It doesn't have to be something that students have to go through. I like it more as, I guess, a little guidebook in a way. And you can chunk it nicely so that students know where to look for what information. And I definitely find it easier than, say, having a student have to go through a textbook or just go and Google something because they don't understand it. Yeah, I think background page can be used in many different ways, but I like to use it as refresher information. I hope that made sense. Sweet. I think that might be the end of all the questions in the Q&A. Deepika, I might hand back over to you and stop sharing my screen.
Sure. So I also saw another question about adding the PDF. I think you can add a separate PDF per se, but as a whole LT lesson, you cannot download it, if that makes any sense. So sure, I think we're good. Thank you so much for such a captivating webinar there. If you have any questions about LT in future, you can contact either Parimal or me for the ANZ region. And thank you so much, everyone, for attending.